Hello, I'm Regina McCann-Hess, president of Forge Wealth Management, and welcome to our Women in Wealth podcast. Welcome to 2025. We're excited to have you here, and we are excited about the year ahead. We have a lot of great topics planned for you, and today we want to start with talking about 10 tips for an emotionally healthy retirement. A lot of times we're talking about the financial side of retirement. Today we're going to talk about the healthy emotional aspect of it and what can you do to help improve that for your future. So one of the tips, the first tip I should say, is to develop an ideal retirement vision. So exactly what is it that you want to do in retirement? Is your vision different than your partner's vision? Do you see both of you doing the same things? Whereas, are you more of a sit on the beach type of person while your spouse is, I want to be golfing or I want to be hiking? And that's okay. You don't have to align perfectly. And most of the time, partners do not align 100% on what their vision of retirement is. However, you do need to talk about it so that you don't get into retirement and after you're retired, you realize, wow, we have two totally different visions of what our retirement's supposed to look like. So having those conversations early and planning on how you're going to balance it out can be a very helpful step. And that's not just like where are you going to live, but what are your activities going to be? How long are you going to spend in certain areas? What's your vacation style look like? What are you going to do for yourself, like for activity wise? Are you going to spend more time donating your precious asset of time to a nonprofit organization? Are one or both of you going to work part-time? These are the types of things that you want to have conversations about. First, think about for yourself and then have a conversation with your spouse. Then tip number 2 is aligning that vision to your core values. And that really comes down to what is important for you. Do you see yourself like going into things that you've always wanted to do but haven't been able to do because you've been working full-time? I will tell you that a lot of my retirees are harder to get a hold of than my worker bees because they've put off all these things for decades. Things that they wanted to do, where they wanted to be active, where they wanted to volunteer, and what types of volunteer work that they did. So these are things that now you're looking at your core values, and do those activities line up with those core values? So this is a great time to think about that and aligning it with what your core values are, and also aligning it up with what your intended lifestyle is going to be in retirement. Tip number 3, discuss your vision and values with your partner and adapt as needed. This is like where I was telling you on tip number 1, think about your ideal vision of retirement, but your partner may have a different vision. So now let's have a conversation where you both share your visions and values with each other. Where can you align and where do you separate? And as far as your day, a day of the week where you both go your separate ways. Note to self, been married for almost 30 years. A day away from your spouse is not always a bad thing. Break up the monotony, get a breath of fresh air. And for me, I tend to drive my husband crazy, so it's better for him too. So that's the idea behind discussing your visions and values with your partner and adopting as needed. If you're both not enjoying the same types of activities, it's okay. And it's okay to have a separate day to yourselves or 2 or 3 of those days doing things that are important to you and make for a better emotionally healthy retirement for yourself and for you as a couple. Okay, tip number 4. This is one of my favorites, right? Working with a certified financial planner professional to connect your common vision and values to a practical financial plan. I don't know how successful a retirement plan could be if you don't do it before you retire. I'm sure plenty of people have done it, have gotten into retirement and said, oh, I didn't think about that, or I didn't think about this, and now I'm already retired, so now what do I do? These are things that you can have a conversation with a certified financial planner helping you with a retirement plan and having all those conversations ahead of time. And that financial planner has talked to hundreds of people also planning to retire and also already in retirement for maybe 5, 10, 20 years and learning from those people what they would recommend for if they could go back and do it again. But it's also good to know, does the lifestyle you want to have align with the amount of money that you have saved or the income that you're expecting to get in your retirement. So that's really important as well. It's all about planning ahead. Tip number 5 is consider retiring in the spring, and especially for colder climate dwellers. And that's most people will be like, why does that matter? It matters a lot for us in the northeast of the country. It's cold out there. It's cold. It gets dark early. I know when I drive home after work, I'm feeling down, and the last thing I want to do is go outside because it's cold. So, when people retire into the winter, we've read a lot of those research reports on how some people do better than others in retirement. And those are the people that tend to do better emotionally, health wise. Retiring in the spring is new birth, right? New life. Everything's budding around you. The trees are coming out with leaves and the flowers are budding up. And you feel like you got a little spring in your step too, because you're all excited. It's nicer weather. You're apt to be outside more, taking a walk, doing what you can do outside versus in the winter when it's really cold. You really avoid that. So we have seen that people retire in the spring with that rebirth, having much better healthy emotional outcome as they're going into retirement. Tip number 6, nurture your family and friends network and get out of the house. Like I was just talking about, in the winter, it's dreary. But when you retire in the spring, you're doing all these activities outside and you're developing all these relationships with people that may also be newly or have already been retired. Now you can take those friendships into the fall, winter where it's really cold and you have a friend network, and having activities planned in the winter to get you out of the house is a really good thing, because one of the worst things about retirement is isolation. And that's where we really have some health issues with our retirees who are living by themselves or who aren't getting outside. Having a friend network or a family network to help them and get them out of the house. Like, who are you going to have lunch with? Having lunch with somebody can help just energize you, feeling some energy from another person and having some kind of activity. So that's another great tip to use. Also, tip number 7, develop your interests and hobbies. Sometimes I'll make new friends and they'll ask me, hey, what are your interests and hobbies? And I'm like, I have 3 kids, even though 2 are in college, one's about to go to college. I am still really busy with them. So the only hobby I have right now is reading. I love to read, and that's my de-stressor. But there's so many other things I'd love to do, but I just don't have the time. But guess what? When you retire, time is your friend. You got a lot of time on your hands. And that's where, if I wanted to volunteer more than I already do, that's when I'm going to be able to do it when I'm not working full time. So those are great things to think about. Even visualize, what will I do with my time? Because what are the things that I really would love to develop, like some of the passions I've had, but I haven't had a chance to do it with the limited time that I've had on my hands. Great time to explore that. Okay, tip number 8, we're getting close here. Restrict emotionally driven impulse spending, especially on adult children. I give my clients out. I tell them as they're retiring or planning to retire, and certainly once they are retired, their response to adult children coming them and asking them for things is, I'm sorry, my financial advisor told me that I am now living on a fixed income and I can't afford to pay for those types of things anymore. While you're working, you can maybe budget that into your own spending, or maybe work a little bit more, take a secondary job to pay for those extra types of things for yourself. I'm not able to do that. Blame the financial advisor. She's the one who told me I'm not allowed to spend money like that anymore. And it gives them the ability to say no to the adult children without them saying no. It's me. So you can borrow that even if you don't have a financial advisor. Use that line. It has freed up my clients from feeling guilty, or at least it's making them feel a little less guilty by saying my financial advisor said. So use that line if it helps you. Tip number 9, set things up to age in place. There's obviously going to become a time, or may become a time, where you may have a health event that at first you may be able to stay at home. And if it gets too hard to have home care, you may have to go to some other type of assisted living or something like that. But for a long period of time, you may be able to stay in your house. And when staying in your house, the trajectory of a healthy life or a longer life is better staying in the home as long as possible. But that doesn't mean the house you're in is equipped for that. So do you have grab rails in the bathroom? Steps are there? If you have large flights of steps, maybe you need a chair rail at some point. Or do you downsize when you're thinking about downsizing? Do you buy a house with less steps, a rancher, or things like that? Picking a house or redesigning your house to be able to age in place, or even adding an elevator to not even handle the steps, that's going to hopefully help your emotional outlook as well. All right, so tip number 10, consider independent living communities for social connections and convenience. Now, that doesn't mean going into assisted living. There's plenty of communities that are 55 plus that have very spry young retirees in them that are living independently in their own apartments, condos, or even houses. However, they also have a community house or a clubhouse where there's tons of activities to have and to do together. There's gardening clubs, there's music clubs, there's all sorts of activities to do, and exercise even. So that again avoids the isolation issue, which is one of the biggest issues in retirement. This gets you a little bit more involved. It maybe helps gain you a few new friends, get you active and out of your house, apartment, or condo. So those are our 10 healthy emotional tips for your retirement. Obviously, we can go a lot deeper into some of these topics. And if you want to have a little bit more detailed conversation with me about that, feel free to reach out to me at forgewealth.com, and I'm happy to have that appointment scheduled for you. Thank you so much for listening. Again, I'm Regina McCann-Hess, president of Forge Wealth Management. I also have a website called forgewealthofcourse.com, forgewealth.com. And I'm on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube at Forge Wealth. And I thank you for joining me. Now, the one thing I do have to do is our compliance people would love to have the following message delivered to you. And this is to keep us all on the same page. So I want to again thank you for joining me on this episode of Women in Wealth podcast. You can watch the founders video I created for you to learn more about me and how I can guide you towards your financial independence at www.forgewealth.com. This information in the podcast and the video is educational and general in nature and does not take into consideration the listener's personal circumstances. Therefore, it's not intended to be a substitute for specific individualized financial, legal, or tax advice. To determine which strategy or investments that may be suitable for you, you should really consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a final decision. Securities are offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC, and investment advice is offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and Forge Wealth Management are separate entities from the LPL Financial. Our show guests and their companies are not affiliated nor endorsed by LPL Financial, Private Advisor Group, or Forge Wealth Management. Thank you so much for joining us, and go make it a great day.